All right, welcome. This morning we're baking some fun stuff, raspberry peach upside down cake. Um, you could definitely substitute different berries or different fruit. There are other stone fruits that are in season right now. You could use nectarines, you could use yellow or white peaches. You could absolutely use plums. Plum upside down cake is delicious, highly recommend. So you could make this with strawberries, you could make it with blueberries. The most important thing about the fruit that you're putting down on the bottom of the pan is that it's washed in advance, but then dry. You want to lay it down in the pan very dry. You don't want a lot of like leftover water. If you've rinsed your berries, make sure the raspberries don't have pools of water inside of them, things like that. Make sure that they're very dry. And if you don't have a cake pan or a pie pan, you can use like a casserole dish, one of those glass Pyrexes. That would work just fine also. A square one would be maybe a little bit better because then you won't have such a thin cake. A 9 by 13 might be a little bit big, but you could always increase the recipe for the cake by maybe 1.5, and then that would fill a 9 by 13 casserole dish if that's what you want for a larger size, depending on how many people you're serving. This is made for a 9-inch cake or pie pan just because that's kind of classic and seems like a standard serving amount for a family of 4. Or if you're like me, just for one, you can just portion control, right, over time. I have my pan already kind of set up, although I want to show you what I'm going to do. This parchment circle I cut out of parchment paper. You can do that by tracing the bottom of your pan, trace it on your parchment, and then cut around that on the inside of the line, because then that'll fit inside rather than outside. And then you get a nice cake circle. They also sell parchment paper already made into cake circles. They're called parchment cake circles. And you can order them online or get them at cake shops if you get into a lot of cake baking. These are really good to have because they help your cake release from the bottom of the pan a million times easier than if you don't have that on there. But the most important thing about putting it in there, you can't just put it in there and pour your cake stuff in. It won't do any good. Your paper will bake into the cake. Gross. And it won't help it from sticking to the pan. So you want to spray the pan. I'm going to give it a light spray on the rim and the bottom, and then I'm going to put my paper in, and then I'm going to spray the paper again. You want to make sure that it is all the way down and very well adhered. The bottom spray helps it stick and helps so that there aren't any air bubbles or places where the cake batter is going to leak underneath the paper. Then a light spray on top, and then your pan is prepared. So you can use butter to rub around the sides of the pan, but I do recommend using at least a little bit of spray on the bottom. If you just have canola oil instead of a spray version, that's fine. Just put it on a paper towel and rub it. Just nice, good coating is going to help all of our fruit and all of our caramel from sticking too much to the bottom of the pan. So I've got that ready. Got my oven preheated to 350. That's what we're baking the cake at. It's a regular, good, classic baking temperature. You want your rack in the middle of the oven. So if you need to get that set up, do that at the beginning. I have in this pot my 1/2 cup sugar, which is from the sugar divided, and 1/4 cup water. We're going to be making a caramel out of this. Now, we made caramel brownies last week with a totally different kind of caramel sauce. It had cream in it, it was butter, and we stirred it the whole time. This is a water and sugar caramel, which is very, very delicate, and you don't want to stir it while it cooks. You want to actually not touch it very often. So what you do for that, you want to combine 1/2 cup sugar and 1/4 cup of water in a sauce pot. I'm using a sauce pot that is obviously very large for the amount of water and sugar that I have. That's because I want to have a surface area. I don't want it to bubble up the sides of the pot. I want it to remain on the bottom and make a nice amber liquid. It's going to turn a really kind of amber brown, dark honey color. It's going to be lovely. And then that's our caramel. We're going to pour that over our fruit, which we're going to arrange in our pan. So I want to turn the sugar on just so it can start. When I added the water and sugar to this pot, I stirred it once with a silicone spatula. You can use a wooden spoon. Try to avoid metal, but I stirred it once just to make sure there weren't any clumps of sugar, but that's it. I'm not going to really stir it while it cooks. It's going to dissolve on its own, and it's going to just simmer back there for about 10 minutes. So I want to turn it on medium-high heat, about halfway between medium and high for now. Bring it up. If that seems like it's getting too dark or too it's cooking too fast, then I can always turn it down to about medium. I'm going to keep an eye on it. You know, I don't just walk away from caramel. That's probably not a good idea. You'll just end up with like hard cracked candy sugar. Well, and then I guess you have candy, but that's a whole different recipe. So you want to keep an eye on it, but just sort of turn it on, put it in the back, let it do its thing. It's not the kind of caramel sauce like we made last time where you had to stir it and stir it the whole time. This one, you don't want to stir it. In fact, if you do happen to get any droplets of sugar or water up the sides of the pan, like I mentioned last week, don't scrape those off or stir those in. Those will then make the rest of the caramel crystallize and harden up, and it'll ruin it. So be delicate with this. Don't mess around with it too much. I know you kind of want to stir things when they're on the stove. Me too. Don't do that. So in the meantime, we're going to arrange some fruit. This is very personal. You can arrange your fruit however you want. You know, have fun with it. Make it beautiful. Let the kids help. This is the kind of stuff that's very creative and fun about baking. You can do a lot of different things. I might not be using all of this. I have white peaches for mine because I kind of like those. Yellow peaches are great, especially right now. Any peaches are great. I'm just going to arrange them around. I want to pack them kind of tightly so that the whole, what will be the top of the cake, is covered. And then I'm just going to lay them out and go in different directions, but you can do any kind of pattern or design that you want. That is the fun part. Especially if you've got kids in the house, let them come up with how they want to do this part. This is really fun. Lay them out, spread them out. And then the fun thing about the berries, especially if you're using small berries like strawberries or blueberries, they do want to just sort of fill in the gaps. They'll lie in all of the empty spaces and sort of help us out by filling in the little holes that are left by the angles of the peaches. So I'm just going to get one last one on this side, kind of try to make it lay on top there. That's good enough. Sugar is bubbling. I'm going to show you this. Let's see, which way do I turn there? Okay. So all of the sugar that was on the bottom, I think you can kind of see there's some small patches that still have not dissolved, but most of it is starting to already dissolve into the water and cook up. The fact that it's boiling and already turning a very, 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 very faint sort of goldenrod hay brown color is it's already starting to caramelize. That's what caramel is. It's cooked sugar. That's why we call it caramelization when we cook the sugars on other foods as well. Okay, so I'm going to arrange some of these now in the middle, going the other way. Definitely does not have to be like perfect or it's going to you know, arrange itself a little bit differently as it bakes because the cake is going to settle on top of it and the peaches are going to break down a little bit. Obviously, they're going to cook. So don't stress too long about this design. Once you get it kind of finished off the way you think you might like it, then once the caramel is done, you're going to pour that over the top, and that's going to sort of set it up. See if I can get, yeah, that's one more. All right, then I'm going to use my berries, like I said, to kind of help fill in the gaps. I'm not worried about it being perfectly symmetrical or berries being every single slice, because the slices are going to be bigger than this design, right? So all the berries just kind of spread out, covering up any mistakes. That's sort of the fun part, definitely right here. These are going to give so much extra juice and flavor into the caramel, the fruit caramel that's going to be created by pouring this sugar caramel over this fruit and the sugars from the fruit that are going to bake out of it. It's just going to be heaven. Okay? A little tiny piece of grass. Okay. That is my fruit arrangement. Nothing very special, but when we flip it, I think it's going to be lovely. This caramel is now completely dissolved. No little bits of sugar on the bottom of the pan or anywhere else. It's all just now sugar water that is boiling. It's still very light in color though. Yeah, I'm never good about how to hold this. Okay. It's still really light, so we're looking for it to get darker and darker, and the longer it simmers and bubbles, the darker in color it's going to get. There is a very fine line, though, and why we need to pay close attention to it. It can go from looking too light to too dark very quickly. So let's see. I'm going to actually just turn this whole thing. You can watch it come up to the right color. All right. Meanwhile, I'll just kind of talk you through this. I have flour in this bowl. It is 1 cup of AP flour. I'm going to mix in 3/4 of a teaspoon baking powder and 1/4 of a teaspoon ground nutmeg. Baking powder, nutmeg, measuring spoons. This is just our dry ingredients. You can get that mixed together. It says sift it together. I sifted the flour, and then I'm going to use a whisk to mix in the, oh my. Sorry about that, everybody. That must not have been fun. And it flipped. Okay. There we go. No? It's upside down now. I'm so sorry. Okay. I think that can be fixed. Oh, by not dropping it over and over again. Sorry, everybody. Technical difficulties. I'm just going to put it back. Try to straighten this out here. Okay. I will show you the caramel when it gets to the right color because that is obviously not working. So our flour, our baking powder, our nutmeg are going to go into this one bowl. We have got 3/4 of a teaspoon baking powder. I'm going to use my 1/4 teaspoon measurer and just go 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then nutmeg, we want 1/4 teaspoon. Perfect. Same spoon. Nice and flat, not too much nutmeg. Nutmeg is very strong. It goes really well in a lot of things, but if it is measured out too heavily or not quite evenly, then it can be really overpowering. It's commonly used in a lot of fall and winter desserts, pumpkin spice and things like that, but it can take over. Same thing with cloves. You want to be delicate with some of those kinds of spices. Okay. So I've just got my dry ingredients, my flour, my baking powder, my nutmeg, already nice and mixed together. That's going to set aside. Okay, I think we're getting there. Nice dark honey amber brown color. Turning the heat off because it will continue cooking. I want to immediately pour it over my fruit into the prepared pan. Slowly so that it covers all of it. I want to spread it out nicely. It's going to cool down as soon as it touches the cold fruit and the cold pan. So it's going to start to set up and harden. So you want to make sure you're spreading it out. I'm going to get all of it out of this pan. I want all of that caramel. I don't want to lose any of it. Scrape it all out. That's why I'm using a silicone spatula because it's going to come off the silicone easier than it would metal. Easier to clean. Okay. That's covered all around in drizzly, delicious caramel. Oh man, if you could smell my kitchen right now. I hope you're making this along with me because it smells amazing. I love caramel. If anybody has any questions, I'm sorry, let me open up the chat box. Oh, any tips on the peaches? So there are two different kinds of peaches. I know I cut the fruit beforehand just to save a little time. There are kinds of peaches called freestone where they just come right off the pit, and then others that don't. So it depends on which kinds of peaches you have, and you can only really tell that by trying to cut it in half and trying to tear it apart. And if it comes apart easily by kind of twisting it, then you have a freestone peach, and you can just pop the pit out and cut it into nice, beautiful wedges all the way around the half of the peach. If you can't freestone your peach, then you have to cut it around the pit, and I just do that by cutting like the widest end, or let's see, yep, one extra. I'll do a quick demo. You just cut it around the wide end. So usually there's a little line that shows where the stem was, and the pit usually goes in that direction. So you just cut your fat end or wide end around the peach pit. Okay, and then each narrow end around the peach pit. So all you're left is mostly the pit in the middle of a little bit of fruit. You can eat that as a snack. And then you just cut your peaches into wedges. Once you have your half peach, it's just round, round, around. So you can cut it in halves and then cut your half into thirds or quarters. That's a good method to wedge anything. So that's a quick way to get peaches into little wedge shapes. They don't have to be perfect because they're going to get baked up and look amazing one way or the other. So I hope that was helpful. Sorry I didn't address that question earlier on. This bowl, we're going to be mixing our butter, sugar, and eggs one at a time. So we've got the remaining sugar, which is 3/4 of a cup of sugar, and a 1/4 pound of butter, which is 1 stick of butter, which I've got nicely softened. I took that out this morning. If yours is not soft and you want to do this right now, then you can put it in the microwave for short amounts of time, like 10 seconds at a time, kind of turn the stick over 10 more seconds. Just don't melt it all the way. Just try to get it a little bit soft. If you have completely melted butter, then put that in the fridge for maybe 30 seconds so that it's a little bit more room temp. Just, I guess if it's completely melted, that's okay. Your cake's gonna still be okay. It's just you get a better creamy texture if the butter is not totally melted. So I'm going with, what was it, 3/4 of a cup remaining sugar. So this is my 1/4 cup 3 times. And then my butter. And I'm going to beat that. I'm not going to use a stand mixer for this. You could, but it's just as easy to get a little bit of a workout in the morning, and that's why the butter is nice and soft. So beat together the remaining butter and sugar. I am going to use this very strong silicone spatula. You could use like a wooden spoon or a silicone spoon, just something that's stiff and not going to bend around on you too much, something that you can actually put in some muscle to this, because we want to beat this together until it is creamy and light in color. So just like we do in our KitchenAid mixer, if you have one, then you can do that with the paddle attachment. But I wanted to show that this cake could just be pretty simply made in a bowl. You don't even need to have any special equipment. As long as you have an oven and a bowl and some energy in your arm, you can do this. So I'm just constantly kind of scraping the butter against the side of the bowl as it comes together with the sugar. It's going to become easier to just stir and beat. I'm using the side of the bowl to help, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? Apply pressure. So I'm pushing against the side of the bowl as I stir, and I'm really exerting a fair amount of pressure here and energy on my arm. Definitely going to switch, get the double arm workout today. I need a trainer to remind me how many seconds I've done on each side. Oh, okay, so we're going for very, very light and fluffy. This is already a different color than it was. We've basically just white I can tell it's increased in volume. It's fluffy and a little bit more airy. I'm going to keep going just for maybe 20, 30 more seconds, but we're going to start adding in our eggs too. We've got 3 eggs. We'll put in 1 at a time. So at this point, I'm going to switch to a whisk because I do want to start aerating the eggs as well as we mix. So I've got lots of good creaming here. The butter and sugar is well creamed together. I'm going to make sure I get all of that off the spatula. That's all really important ingredients. Go ahead and just use the best tool I have, which is my hands. All of that off. Okay. Perfect. 3 eggs, but 1 at a time. It's kind of important that you don't put them all in at the same time. Then you'll sort of you'll deflate any of the air and work that we've done by beating it so well and creaming it together so nicely. And we want to make sure that each egg gets really incorporated very, very well. So using a whisk now, I'm just 1 egg at a time, adding a lot of volume. Another egg. So the fat from the egg yolk helps the cake in its like richness, obviously. The egg whites are where we get the fluffiness from. You can make great cakes with just egg whites. In fact, we're going to, I think next week, be making angel food cake. Really excited. Last egg. Okay. Once we've got this egg mixed in, we're going to add in our dry ingredients and stir it with the spatula until it's just combined. We don't necessarily want to overmix it, although this isn't that delicate kind of a batter. Okay, that's well mixed. All right, dry ingredients. These have already been mixed and sifted together, so I'm not worried about that. I'm just going to put them right in. And not folding it per se. It's not, we don't have it. We're going to get into that with a different kind of cake batter, how we need to fold it so that we're not deflating all of the work that we just did. But we do want to just mix it. Just mix it. So you're not getting your arm workout in this version, this step. You got that already. This one is a little bit more delicate. Just combined. Oh, the nutmeg smells great mixing into that. Nutmeg is a pretty traditional spice used in a lot of classic cakes and baking recipes. A lot of French and British desserts have nutmeg, a little bit of nutmeg, sort of a classic flavor. But again, it can be overpowering, so you want to make sure that little tiny 1/4 teaspoon measurement was on this, small side. Okay, got my fruit, my caramel, all my deliciousness in this pan. I'm going to scrape out my well-mixed batter. There's no more dry clumps. There was no more dry flour around the sides of the pan. By stirring around the cake batter, I could see that all of the flour had been really well incorporated, and that's why you want to sift the flour if you have lumpy flour in advance, because then you don't have to overmix the batter trying to get the lumps out once you've added it to the rest of the ingredients. Okay, all that set aside. That sugar off my fingers. All right. We want to make sure that the cake batter is spread out, obviously. It wouldn't go into the oven looking like that. That wouldn't do much good. So I've got a little offset cake spatula, but you can use that same spatula, silicone spatula, or you can use like a butter knife would be perfectly fine. Just going to make sure that the cake batter gets spread out into these little nooks and crannies so that when it starts to bake, it kind of sinks into all the holes and we get cake all the way around the fruit. That caramel that I made is definitely cooled off and it's now like crispy and hard. I can feel it underneath the spatula as I move it around. That's okay. It's going into an oven where it's going to get hot again. Okay, so my cake batter is pretty evenly spread out. I'm happy with that. A little bit of the fruit is okay showing. It's just going to be more juicy flavor. All right, this is going into my 350 oven. I think we're right on time. It's got to bake for about 30 minutes. It depends on the size of the pan that you're using. If you're using one of the 9x13s, then, and you increase the cake amount, I hope, a little bit, then it's going to be probably a lot more shallow. It won't take as long to bake. This is a small pan. It'll probably take the full 30 minutes to get the very middle of that cake batter baked all the way through. So there's plenty of time if you are baking along to catch up. I know I go kind of fast and I'm happy to answer any questions to help get you back on track. I just wanted to make sure that I have a mostly finished product to be able to show you at the end of class. I know that's part of the fun, is being able to see what it turns out to look like. Actually, Angel Food Cake is in 2 weeks. Sorry, I was just looking at the calendar I have on my wall. Angel Food Cake I have planned for 2 weeks. Next week we're going to do something fun. Definitely summer themed. They're lemon blueberry whoopie pies. So that's exciting. And I'll send the recipe and all of the information out for that at the end of this week, like I usually do. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah. The batter smells amazing. The pan going into that hot oven already smells amazing because the caramel is getting warm again and the nutmeg is really fragrant. So it's just begun its journey to cakehood, and it already smells fantastic in here. If anybody is baking along, the most important thing that you're looking for, because you can't see the bottom, you can't see the fruit and how that's doing, is making sure that the cake is just fully baked. That's all that we're after at this point. The caramel and the fruit are going to do its thing. So having a toothpick or a little skewer or something, whatever you normally use to test cakes, or if this is your first time, I'm excited. Toothpicks are really great because they don't leave a gaping hole or gash in your cake. If you have a very, very small, thin, sharp paring knife, then I would recommend that. It depends also on the depth of what you're cutting into. When we poke into this cake, we have to remember that there is fruit and caramel at the bottom. So if it comes up unclean, that's okay. It just can't come up with cake batter still on it. If it's got some like moist cake crumbs and some red juices, that's what we're looking for. That's going to be the good stuff. So couple different things to look for is just the cake being done, no more jiggle in the middle, just like a lot of other things that get baked. Also a good golden color. We're looking for like a nice golden brown cake, you know, it's a white cake, or a yellowish cake, I suppose. Although a lot of those cakes that come in boxes that say white and yellow and things, that's a lot of food coloring and stuff. So you can make your own versions of cake, and they're yellow because they have butter in them. White cakes are white because they used to be made with shortening, and that's where you get different colors. Butter also is yellow because, well, natural butters are kind of yellowish, but we make butter more yellow with dye because it's what people seem to think they want. A lot of cheeses are dyed. It's important to read the label of your food if you care about that kind of thing. I just learned that my grandmother she herself used to put yellow food coloring into the shortening to make it look like butter. And then they came out with margarine, so then that was cheaper, I guess, more affordable than butter. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of different things, but in your cake, if it's like one color or the other, that's usually because of a food dye. Red velvet cake, there's a lot of legends that go around. It's red because back then it was made during the Civil War a lot, and one story goes they couldn't get fresh cocoa powder, and the cocoa powder made everything turn kind of a rusty red color. I don't think that that's true. There's other stories that it was that it had different things in it that made it turn red. I don't know. I don't know if there's a definitive story about who made red velvet cake first and why it's red. But now it's red because they add in like half a bottle of red food dye, which seems unnecessary to me if all you want is a really nice like buttermilk chocolate cake, because that's what it is. It's just a buttermilk chocolate cake. And you can have that without the red food coloring. I just don't get it. Personal peeve. Enjoy your red food cake. I'm not going to yuck anyone else's yum. If that's your favorite cake, that's fine. Anyway, we are going to be making lemon whoopie pies next week, blueberry whoopie pies with lemon. So that very seasonal, very exciting, very delicious. If you've got kids in the house, they're going to love them. I love them. They're really great. Just little like cake cookie sandwiches. If you don't know what a whoopie pie is, they're on Google. If there are any other questions about this or anything else. Okay, good question. So the difference between the two different caramels. Last week had butter in it. And so we mixed the butter and sugar and then let that melt. And well, we cooked the sugar down. We added the butter. We added some cream. So that's a very different caramel. That's like a chewy candy caramel, or if it's cooked down, it's a caramel sauce. This is traditionally just called caramel because it's just sugar with a little bit of water. You can also just make caramel with just sugar. I would think the difference in using them is very, it depends on what you're using it for, but the first one is traditionally used to make chewy caramel candies, or the kinds of caramel sauce that you get like on ice cream sundae bars, you know, if you make it more of a liquid, that's that kind of butter caramel sauce. And then these kinds of sugar, just sugar caramel, you use for different things. You can cook it to different temperatures and then harden it. You can use it for decorations. If you watch the Great British Bake Show, which I love, there's always somebody in one episode, they always have some kind of sugar work episode, and like they dip hazelnuts into the caramel and let it drip off to make spiky, pretty things. That's what this kind of caramel is used for. It's usually just cooked sugar, sometimes with water. And it's all about the temperature that you're cooking it to and then what you're going to use it for. I know I got an email, and I don't think I responded yet. I got an email over the weekend about those soft, chewy caramel candies going into a silicone ice tray and then not being able to take them out. And I think that, yes, a little bit of pan spray would help that situation, but it might just be that caramel was a little bit too chewy for that kind of a mold, and it works better if we cut into them. I know I said that it would work well in a candy mold, because I think that those unstick a little bit better than the ice cube trays. The ice cube tray, I'm glad that you tried it. It's a fun experiment, and maybe a little bit of this pan spray I think would help. But I know you said you put them in the fridge, so getting them cold would have been my recommendation would have been to put them in the freezer to try to get it like rock solid to pop it out, and see if that would help if they're indefinitely stuck in your ice cube tray. But I hope that helped about that last week. Can you use a glass pie plate for this recipe? Yes, 100% you can. That would be really beautiful, actually, because then you can actually see what's happening on the bottom. And then you don't even have to necessarily flip it upside down to serve it. You could always just serve it as is and scoop it out of your lovely pie plate. But yeah, that would work just as well. You want to make sure that you're still using that parchment though, or if not parchment, then just a lot of butter and pan spray to make sure that you can loosen it up, because the caramel that's inside there on the bottom of the pan, it's very sticky and it's cooking a lot. So anything that you can do to help make sure when you try to flip it out, if you do eventually try to flip it out, that it's going to come out. So that's why the parchment circle really, really helps to kind of keep the attachment looser than it would be to the metal itself. But a glass pie plate, I think a good amount of pan spray and butter is still a really good idea. You don't want to just let the fruit and caramel cook on the bottom. You need to prepare the pan. But if you don't plan on flipping it upside down, then don't use the parchment paper, obviously. Well, that might not be obvious. I actually don't use the parchment paper, because then when you cut into it and scoop it, you're going to be cutting into paper, and it's unnecessary. The paper is to help us be able to flip it upside down and remove it from the pan at the end of the process. So yeah, if you use glass or one of those kinds of pie plates or a glass cake pan, which they do make, you can always just serve it in that dish, and it's pretty. Just as pretty. You could dust the top with some powdered sugar, maybe decorate with some fresh raspberries around the plate or something like that if you want to be fancy, which you are. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We're all fancy. I really love making dessert in the morning. I'm not going to eat this whole cake right now. That would be so bad. But I don't know, I feel like if I have a little slice of this now instead of later in the day, I can work it off. I get my energy. It makes me feel good, and then makes the house smell good all day long. So that's always a treat. I'm going to take a peek. My batter is definitely cooking around the sides of the pan. The middle is still bubbling up, but what I want to do is spin the pan around halfway through. It's not even halfway through, but I kind of like to make sure that the pan gets a good even bake all the way around. So turn it, give it a little nudge, make sure that every side gets sort of even heat all the way through. But at this point, we are just waiting for it to bake. If there's anything that I could demonstrate or do again, if anybody wanted to see, if I move too fast, if there are leftovers, yeah. Do they need to be refrigerated? Yes. Yeah, just because of the fruit. I mean, if you plan to eat it later that day or the next day, maybe, and your house is not hot, like if you have a really well air-conditioned kitchen, then you could leave it out for the night. But the fruits, I would want to refrigerate that, and then you could always warm it back up. Put it in the microwave or something for like a fresh slice the next morning, or if you plan to serve it for dessert, like on another day, just pull it out like while you're eating dinner so it comes to room temperature, and then you're ready to go. But yeah, if you plan to keep it for a couple of days, then the fruits want to be preserved in the refrigerator. Yes. My apartment is hot. No matter how hard my little portable air conditioner is working, it's warm, so that wouldn't work. I'd have to refrigerate it just as soon as it's cooled down. I'm gonna cover it up nicely and put it in the fridge with one slice missing. So that's that one. Let's see. I guess, kind of walk you through. Next week are the lemon blueberry whoopie pies. The week after will be our angel food cake with berries and cream. And then the last week, I think I've planned a sort of a fine dining pastry chef extravaganza. We've gone from very simple one bowl, one tray bakes with brownies, moving into, we're going to be making pavlovas. I think I talked about it before. Pavlovas are an egg white meringue. You can make them in full-size cake size. That's the traditional pavlova. We're going to be making miniature pavlovas with lemon curd and berries. It's the national dessert of Australia.
Julia, can I ask you a quick question? So our timing, we're doing it, but we're a little bit later. So we just did we put the caramel on.
Okay.
And do we need to wait a long time for this to cool, or we can put the batter on right away?
No, if your batter is ready, you can put it on right away.
Okay. All right, so that's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, and then you can put it right into the oven.
Okay.
Fantastic. I'm so happy you're making it along. That's fun.
It's a little intense, but it's so worth it.
I know. And it's hard for me to go at a pace that people can keep up with, but also have a finished product so that people can see. So it's sort of a fine line. I'm trying to actually take a small poll. You can let me know in the chat box if you have an opinion on what time of day classes might be better for people, and also if doing them for an hour and a half would work for people, just because that seems to me that I could take a lot more time and do them along with people in a different way. But, sort of depends on what other people kind of think. So if you have an opinion on either of those things, you can tap it into the chat box and just let me know, because we are trying to decide some program formatting and scheduling for fall, obviously. Once these workshops are done in August, well, actually just like 3 more weeks, right? Yeah. Then we've got the month of August, where I think we will be doing a little bit of Teaching Kitchen stuff, but we'll start back up with fall schedule in September. And we'll want to have, I would love to have some feedback on what works best for everybody. So that would be great. Yeah, just type it in, let me know. I won't have to like read that out loud or share that with everybody, but I can read it afterwards and see what everybody says about that. I like this recipe, again, as I've said many times, because it's fairly easy to clean up. I've got 2 bowls that I used and a whisk and a spatula, and then I'm going to have a cake pan. But in the long run, it's not too messy of a process. It's not too complicated. Any fruits will work. This is classically made with pineapple, and it's amazing with pineapple. Pineapple upside down cake is one of my favorite things on the planet. And there's great pineapple right now. Of course, we're not growing it in California. That's not a thing. But you can get great pineapple, and you can do basically the exact same thing. What you would do if you're using pineapple, just like any other fruit, is dry it out. So you would slice it and have it prepared, and then lay it out on some paper towels and dry out the pineapple on each side, kind of let any of its natural juices come out. Maybe let it sit on the paper towel for 5 to 10 minutes in room temperature, and just let that pineapple dry out a little bit. And then decorate the bottom of your pan and go for it. Delicious cake. You could do that with little orange zest in the batter, tropical flavors. This works really well with plums, and plums are on fire right now. Plums are definitely in season. You can get red flesh plums or white flesh plums. Doesn't really matter, although the red flesh plums look a lot prettier on an upside down cake if you're going for a visual appeal. Some of the other berries, blueberries are gonna put out a lot more juice. That's just naturally, they are a lot juicier of a berry. That's what they are. They're just little balls of juice, and they're amazing. But they're gonna liquefy a lot more on top of your cake if you use blueberries. Not a problem. It's gonna turn into basically blueberry caramel syrup on top of your cake. So I don't know if anyone has a problem with that. If you like blueberries in the first place, you wouldn't have put them in your cake otherwise. So if you are, though, interested in the perfect visual appeal of like what your design might look like, then blueberries are probably going to be a little bit messier, just as a side note, if that's something. Let's see, any other random notes about this?
Julia, can I ask one question?
Of course you can.
Hi. So I use an 8x8 pan, and the cake wasn't enough. So I'm doing another batter really quickly. Should I do the whole thing or half of it?
Probably just half. It wasn't enough to kind of just sort of spread out even in a thin layer, or what?
Yeah, it was like it would be, I started to pull the pretty juices.
Got it.
So I'm a little more.
Yeah, I would just go with half, although that's kind of awkward because it's 3 eggs, right? You could even minimize it maybe by a third. It just sort of depends on how much you think you need to add into the pan. But if you do the whole batter, it's going to be way too thick of a cake.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Great question. I hope it works out. 8x8 pan, because it's square, so it has those corners, which is a lot more extra space. Yeah, geometry. Actually, I did well at it back then, but it's been a long time. I'll just say that. Very, very long time. I can smell my cake. I don't think I have like an exceptional sense of smell, but after working in the kitchen for so long, I'm very in tune to when I can smell food, and especially when I can smell food cooking. You'll get better at that when you bake more often. You can start to smell the sugar is actually cooking, and you can smell the nutmeg. And what I'm smelling right now is just cake. It's just classic cake smell, which tells me that the cake is really starting to bake up. So I'm impatient and I want to look at it. Oh yeah, okay. I'm going to show you, because this is a really good point that you're all going to look at yours and see similar things. I have got baked cake around the sides, which is what I was smelling. It's even kind of firm to the touch. It bounces back. That part of the cake is nearly done. But right in the middle, I'm not going to touch it because it's scaldingly hot cake batter. That's still wet cake batter. And I don't want to touch that. That would burn me. But that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the very middle to become set up just like the sides are. And for me, that will probably just take another 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes. And then I'll be able to show you at the end. If you have, like that cake spatula that I used, it's an offset cake spatula. If you have one, that's what I'm going to be using to help run around the sides of the pan to make sure that the sides don't stick. Before I try to flip it, I'm going to loosen it by running this offset cake spatula around the sides of the pan. That just helps to make sure any of the caramel or cake batter that's stuck to the sides, I can get that loose. And then I'm going to be using a big plate to flip it out on. So as long as your plate is much bigger than the cake pan or pie pan, or at least you want it, for safety's sake, have, like a 1/2 inch at least on the sides. You don't want the cake pan to be the exact same size as the plate, because when you flip it, you could have drips of caramel that come off the sides, and you could actually get pretty hurt. Because what we're going to be doing is putting this on top of the cake pan, and then flipping the whole thing over. If you flip the whole thing over and it's right up to the edge, then you're going to get hot caramel dripping down the sides and possibly onto your arm, definitely all over the place, and we don't want that. So make sure that your plate is at least a little bit bigger than the cake or pie pan that you used. If you used a square pan, then I recommend flipping it first out onto a, if you don't have a big square or rectangular platter, which a lot of people don't, then like a sheet pan, a cookie tray or something, anything that's just going to give you a little bit more surface area so you can put that safely on top and it covers the whole top of your square cake pan, and then flip it. And I am going to be doing this while it's warm because I want to show you. You can wait for a little while just so that the pan is not like scaldingly hot, but the longer you wait, then the more the fruit and the caramel hardens on the bottom of the pan. You want to get it out while it's still warm. So you do have to be careful, and this is one of those times where, oven mitts, towels, whatever you use that feels safest to you to do this in the situation, then that's how you need to do it. Do you have another question?
Julia, are you okay with us recording just this last part? Because my teenage daughter is going to do the last part without me, and I want her to be able to watch it like in 15 minutes. Is that possible, or what should we do? I mean, she's going to keep watching, but I have a feeling she'll also like the kind of play-by-play. This is, I guess, the hard thing about doing it alongside.
For sure. If you can record on your own and it just records me, then you're more than welcome to just for the last session. I am also recording so that the session does get uploaded eventually, but I know if you want to watch it like today, then
yeah. It says I need to request record permission.
Okay, so does it send something to me, or I don't know how to do that?
Request record permission. When I'm teaching, it's it should be under, I can't remember the settings. It might be wherever you have options down at the bottom. There should be something like more, and then you get a set of like allow or you can look me up in the participants and say allow to record. Usually that if you click on a particular person. So I'm sorry we can probably handle this.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've allowed it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Okay, so that way you can rewatch when it's time to take it out. Got it. Because you heard what she said, it needs to be, hold on.
Thanks. So, okay, back to that plate. I guess that was just the only note, to make sure that you're picking something larger no matter what size or shape your pan is, because it's going to be dangerous and a little bit unwieldy if you're using a dish that's a little bit too small. So take the time to find the right thing now, because you are going to want to flip it out while it's still warm. You're also going to want to put it onto a cooling rack of any size or shape, just because anytime that you take a baked good, even in a cake pan, out of the oven, you want to immediately start letting it cool off in the pan too. And that means letting air circulate all the way around it. And that's why these cooling racks have little feet on them, so that they stand up tall on top of your surface and the air can begin to circulate, and that actually does start to cool off the bottom of the pan and the entire process. We love cooling racks. They're very important for baking, especially when you're doing things that need to set up like cookies or muffins. Cooling racks are very important. So my cake is so close to being done, I can smell it. I just took a little quick peek at it. That jiggle is almost completely gone. And so when I pull it out, let's see, I've got toothpicks here. That will be the ultimate test. And let's take a look, see. Oh, it's still a little too jiggly, I can tell. Okay, I'll show you. We're so close, but that little jiggle is a little too wet. I'm going to be able to tell by going right in the middle. Well, yeah. It's coming out just barely, like the batter is not thick. It's almost cooked, but it's still a little bit raw. Just a teeny, teeny, tiny bit raw. Okay. Man, it might be right down to the wire. Either way, you know that you'll see the finished picture on our Instagram, but I think I'll be able to show you at least how to get it out of the pan just before we close off for the day. But if you are still baking along, I hope yours are in the oven and smelling deliciously. What do you do if you don't have a cooling rack? That's an excellent question. I didn't have one for years, and I used the rack from the inside of my toaster oven. So I would take there's like, you know, the little toaster rack inside toaster ovens. I would use that as my cooling rack. Dual purpose tools in the kitchen always. If you don't have a cooling rack, then I recommend getting a different pan and flipping it upside down. Or a colander, if you have that doesn't have like a feet on the bottom. If you have anything that's perforated at all, that would allow air to come through, that it could rest on top of. Otherwise, any kind of cake pan or other pan that you could flip upside down, like a different kind of pie plate, and put it on top of, so that at least the air can get around the sides of it and, you know, as close to the bottom as possible. But for this cake, luckily, you're only gonna need the cooling rack for just a couple of minutes. It's really just to place the pan on while you're getting your plate ready, because you kind of want to get it out of the pan quicker in this process. You want to release it while it's still warm. That's important. So it's not going to stay on the cooling rack for very long. You're going to put it right onto the plate, and then it'll cool down on the plate. Or you eat it while it's warm. Delicious. So it's just going to be another few minutes. I am so close, but obviously if I try to flip it out and the middle is still goopy and a teeny tiny bit raw, then I flip it out and the whole center will collapse in the middle, and all of that hard work and arranging and love will be a big mess on a plate. You, I guess, could then put it back in the oven, just scoop it back into your cake pan, but all of the beauty will be gone. The deliciousness will still be there, but the beauty might be missing. And the whole point of this cake is to arrange it nicely and to have a lovely flip. Now, it's almost impossible to, well, no, people do this, I guess, every day, but it's not surprising if your fruit sticks to the bottom. If you flip it out and your cake comes out and most of the fruit sticks to the cake and it's lovely, but there's like 2 or 3 peach wedges still inside the cake pan, that happens to the best of us. That happens a lot of the time. You just carefully, maybe with a pair of tongs or a fork, take it out of the cake pan and put it neatly back in its place on the cake, and that's fine. That's what professionals do before they put it in the glass case to sell it to you. So don't think that there's any shame in that. It happens to literally everybody when they're doing this kind of thing. I'm gonna wait right until the very last second. It is 10:55, 10:56 exactly according to my satellite watch, but yeah, right until the very last minute here, just so that we can make sure that that center is baked. I have a few extra peaches. I'm going to turn that into salad topping, because fruit and salad makes everything better, I think. I like to eat sugar, I'm not gonna lie. I really, really like to eat sugar, so I try to eat a lot of fruit, because then at least it's the good kind, right? And we have the most amazing fruits in season right now. My fridge is full of cherries and strawberries and berries and white peaches, yellow peaches, nectarines, plums. Stone fruit is my favorite. Absolutely my favorite. And you can do this with any of them. If you have a cherry bitter, you can even do a cherry upside down cake. Be delicious. I would use brown sugar for that, for the caramel. You could do apple. You could turn this into an apple cake in the fall. That would be fantastic. I would also do that with brown sugar caramel instead, but that's just because I like brown sugar with those fall flavors. That's a very personal, weird thing. You could use the same exact caramel for almost any single fruit, just as long as you're drying the fruit out very well before you arrange it, because then it gets too liquidy, too saucy, and your cake won't bake on the bottom. You'll get just a soggy bottom all the way through. So that's that. If you haven't signed up for our other workshops, we did some really fun stuff in our meal planning class yesterday. It was sort of Italian week, whole wheat pasta, rustic garlic marinara, Caesar dressing made from scratch with Greek yogurt. Some fun stuff to eat throughout the week. Tomorrow in our kids cooking class, we're doing turkey meatballs with a different kind of marinara. So the kids can have fun shaping and baking those meatballs up themselves. That'll be fun. Not just for kids though, so if you like meatballs, sign up for that class too. And then next week, meal planning is, ooh, yum, we're doing Middle Eastern food. And then, like I said, the lemon blueberry whoopie pies, and then the kids class next week is turkey burgers. I'm just trying to teach all your kids how to cook so that they can make dinner for you. I hope it's working. Let me know. Oh, we're very, very, yeah, I think we're there. I've got a really good golden brown color all the way spreading across the top. Let's try out our toothpick. Right into the center where it would be the rawest. It's coming out clean, although it seems a little glisteny. Yeah. So what I'm looking for, around the sides, it's firm, bounces back to my touch. In the center, doesn't bounce back right away. It's still a little bit raw in the middle. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to flip it out to show you right now, but I can. I mean, if you wanted to stay a few minutes, you're more than welcome, but I understand we're done. When you do want to get it out, I am going to put this back in the oven, but when you do want to get it out, you use your butter knife or paring knife or cake spatula like I have to just loosen it up all the way around the sides while it's still very warm. You want to loosen it up while the sugars and the caramels are still very, very warm. Get that all the way around so you know it's detached and nothing sticking. And then what you're going to do is put your plate or platter on top of that. Use your towel on the bottom, your oven mitts, whatever is most careful for you. You can do it with the cooling rack or without. When I do it, I'm going to do it without, just because that seems unwieldy. And I'm going to get the towel underneath. I'm going to put this above, grab it on both sides, and flip. So you see how I'm doing that? I'm going to have my 2 towels, my plate, grabbing and holding the cake and the plate itself with my thumbs. I'm holding the cake handles underneath with my middle and forefinger. Got a firm grip on both sides, top and bottom. Okay? And then you would just flip. And the reason that you want to use a very large plate is because while you flip that, some juices might come out the sides, and you don't want that to trickle on your arms or splatter around the kitchen in any way. I just need like 5 more minutes in that oven and it's going to be ready to do it. But if you have to go, I understand. Look for the final picture on Instagram. And yes, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So do you recommend, like, after the cake gets out of the oven and it's completely done, do you recommend that we should wait like any amount of time at all before we flip it, or just do it right after it gets out?
Do it pretty much right after. You could wait like a couple of minutes, but you don't want to wait very long because then the caramel gets cold or hard and it'll start sticking, and then it'll be even harder to flip out. So the soonest that you can do it without being like afraid or it's too hot to hold with towels, then the sooner you can do it, the better.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I understand if you all have to go. I'm going to let the recording keep going until I'm done. So we're going to have an extra long recording for this class. Once it gets uploaded, just because I do want everyone who's watching in the end to also be able to see what it looks like and how I flip it out. But if you have to go, I understand. If you need to get back to work or join a different Zoom call and leave me on your other device, that's fine. Just mute me and that's fine. Yes, you can absolutely stay. I am not going to kick you out if you don't have to go. That's fantastic. I don't have to go either. I just want to, I think that this one especially, I think showing the method of getting it out and what it looks like and all of that is an important part of the process. So I want to make sure that that's part of this recording. But if you do have to go, check the Instagram for the final product, because I will post a picture later on today. So you can still see what it looks like in all of its glory, hopefully. Hopefully it has glory. But yeah, you don't have to go anywhere. If you can stay, then please stay. We'll just wait a few more minutes for this to finish. Just that little bit of jiggle in the middle. I want to make sure we put all of that work into it. If it collapsed in the center, I would be a very, very sad chef. So we're going to wait. I'm going to just carefully, slowly put some things away. I hope everybody has a good rest of the day planned today. I know that there's always work to be done and things to focus on, but it's also really hot out and it's very lovely, and I hope you're taking some time for yourself and taking those walk breaks and taking those breathing breaks and being very mindful about eating and not just eating the entire cake in front of the TV. I have to remember not to do that. See. Yeah, I just love peaches. Just love them. And they make great jams, great jellies. You can make peach. Well, the first thing I ever learned how to bake was peach cobbler. I was 3 years old. My grandma made it with a biscuit dough topping. It was very, very good. She made a lot of crisps too with oats and brown sugar. A lot of fruit desserts. I think because it's what you could get. And that was good for you. Put fruit in your dessert makes it healthy, right? We're so close. I know, I'm just kind of like rambling now. If there are any other questions about anything else, I would be happy to help in any way that I can. If if you think of anything throughout the week while you're cooking or in the supermarket and you have a random question about food or recipes, that's what we're here for at the Teaching Kitchen. So you can always reach out, even if it's not about raspberry peach upside down cake. We are here to help in any way that we can. You can reach me at the email that I always email you guys at, or on our Instagram page. I'm the one that manages that page. So if you message that page, you are messaging me. I love getting pictures and seeing your food, and if you send them to me with permission, then I am happy to share them on our Instagram. That's always really fun. Or tag us in your photos if you do that kind of a thing. Let's see, let's see, let's see. Oh, almost. Like literally, think 2 minutes. 2 minutes. It's probably not helping that I keep opening the door because I'm being impatient and I want that cake. I can smell the caramel. It's incredible. And it's going to smell like that throughout my, the whole upstairs hallway of my building for a while. I hope my neighbors enjoy it. I love it when people cook things because we have a very small building and it's an enclosed hallway. So when I get home and someone is making something, I love it. I can tell, oh, barbecue, oh, pozole, pancakes. Somebody eats popcorn every day. But who am I to judge? That's okay. I love the smell. That's all right. You could make this gluten-free with one of those gluten-free flour mixes. It would be so easy to do. All you do is swap the flour for like a Bob's Mill 1-for-1 gluten-free mix, and it would make an outstanding cake. You could make this with a little bit of Greek yogurt instead of that butter, although you would still want some of the fat content. So you would either use a full fat yogurt or use like half butter, half non-fat Greek yogurt. Because then you still get a nice creamy texture, but with like half the fat, if that's something that's important to you. How else could you modify this? Otherwise, obviously, all of the different fruits that we use, you can change and modify. Vegan, let's see. You could, I guess, yeah, you could make this vegan. You would just use vegan butter, which exists now. That makes vegan baking so much easier now because these products just exist on the market. Vegan butter, there's a lot of vegan butters that are great to use in baking. There's also vegan sour cream. It's like a tofu-based sour cream. That adds a lot of really creamy texture to baked goods, I've found. So if you're substituting butter for a vegan product, then using like a half vegan butter spread and like margarine and a half vegan sour cream, it's kind of tangy and it gives it a lot of extra creaminess when you're baking. That's also could supplement for eggs. You can use, well, you can make like vegan eggs with flax seeds and water. You can also just substitute in baking by using, what's a good substitute for eggs? Well, because you want the air and the volume, but you still want a little bit of the creaminess. So I guess some people still just use different vegan products, like vegan sour cream is a great substitute. You can use just a little bit of like oil, canola oil, and then some margarine to supplement that fat. There's a lot of different things you could do. You could definitely make a vegan upside down cake, and that would be really delicious. Yes. Okay. Okay. Finished color. Nice, even golden brown all the way across. Firm to touch outside. Firm to touch center. Nice. It's not sinking in on itself. Everything is ready to go. The pièce de résistance. I hope that it works. You all waited for this. I'm going to run this around the sides again, just because while it was in the oven, anything might have cooked out or stuck again. Want to make sure those sugars are well detached from the side of the pan. Okay. I'm going to place my plate on top. I'm not going to use the cooling rack, sliding around a little bit too much. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for the safest extraction possible. Okay, so plate on top, plate wants to leave. Okay, I've got both towels gripped carefully around the handle of the cake pan. If your pie pan or cake pan is just a round pan and doesn't have the handle on it, then you want to wait for it to cool down just a hair longer. And you definitely want to maybe use the cooling rack because you want to be able to have something that you can grip both the plate on the bottom and the pan itself on the top. So these handles for me work really well. I'm holding the handle of the cake pan and the plate itself. I'm going to make sure that it's centered on the cake pan evenly. All the sides are covered. Okay. Here we go. Let's hope this works. And then flip. Okay. Carefully get your towels out. And then I'm going to use one of these towels. Obviously, the cake pan is still hot. To lift it off. Ta-da! The paper did all of the work for us, making sure that it didn't stick to the pan. And we have our beautiful peach. The raspberries baked into it, like I said, so you didn't have to worry about that placement. The peach arrangement, because I used white peaches, they're very white in color. It's not as visual of a demonstration. If you use yellow peaches, it's going to look even more vividly patterned in terms of how it comes out. But you can still see the nice layout of the peaches and how the raspberries kind of baked into the cake and all the little nooks and crannies. I've got raspberries all the way around the side. It's going to be in every single slice. And then we know we have it right in the middle because we put it right in the center. So we've got a big surprise of more berries and peaches right in there. And that is our beautiful upside down peach and raspberry cake. Any fruit you could do this same concept with and it will turn out very, very well. If you want now to get fancy, let it cool to room temperature, dust it with powdered sugar through a bowl sieve or a fine mesh strainer, and then you get that sprinkling of powdered sugar all the way around your cake. Lovely for presentation. Or you want to get really technical. If you are a baker and you happen to have a pastry torch, it's just like a butane gas can with a torch attachment. It's a pastry tool. It's not for drugs, but whatever people do, I don't care. It is for pastry. It's a can. You put the torch on top, and it's meant to use for like creme brulee. It's how you brulee desserts. It's how you get the caramel on top of something to get golden and brown. If you wanted to brulee your upside down fruit cake, you could. That is taking it to the to an 11 for sure. But this has so much caramel baked into that bottom now top of the cake. It is a perfect dessert in and of itself. A little bit of powdered sugar, maybe a dollop of vanilla ice cream or whipped cream, but this is paradise, and I hope that you enjoy yours. I hope that you make it. I'm glad that you stuck around to see the flip. That is kind of important. Be careful. Make sure you have a solid grip, like a crab grip, on both sides of the bottom of the pan and the top of the plate before you flip. Make sure that you are holding that plate firmly in place before you flip. Okay, extremely important. The flip itself, the faster you go, the better. The more natural and unafraid you are, the easier it will come out and process, itself. And then just gently set it down. Try to just get that. The plate's not hot. Remember that. I know in this situation, you're like, I got to keep the towels. The plate's not hot. So once you flipped it, just grab the plate, okay, and carefully set it down. And then use the towels to remove the hot cake pan, or if it has fallen off, just be careful. But just handle that situation with care, okay, please. And then send me the pictures of what it looks like, okay? And thank you again for sticking around. I know it was a little bit late,